In today's story, we follow a ninja whose mastery of Genjutsu would shake the entire shinobi world. This is part 1 of What If Naruto Mastered Genjutsu Beyond Reality. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more Naruto What If stories. Chapter 1 Battlefield Analysis Team. Clang clang clangs. The sounds of shuriken and kunai flying across the battlefield echoed in the distance. Behind the front lines, members of the analysis team were working urgently on their missions. Captain, this is the genin with sensory talent, Tabitake Tanbo. He chose to join the analysis team immediately after graduation, Dokuraku Mawashi said, pointing to Tanbo standing behind him. Yamanaka Inoichi looked toward him, raising an eyebrow at the boy who was clearly still very young. Tanbo wore a Konoha forehead protector. However, his eyes, ears, and the back of his neck, essentially his entire head above the headband, were wrapped tightly in grayish-white bandages. Observing the world without using his eyes, it seems his sensory talent is indeed impressive, Inoichi thought. Is that Inoichi-senpai? Hello, I am Tabitake Tanbo. Seeing Inoichi look his way, Tanbo immediately straightened his posture, his voice laced with excitement. There's no time for small talk, Inoichi commanded. Mawashi, you take him under your wing. Aim to have him learn the Psycho Mind Transmission reading mind technique in the shortest time possible. Can you do it? On it, Captain, Mawashi replied, his eyes flashing with intensity. Tanbo's face fell. He had hoped for direct guidance from a jonin. His senses lingered on Dokuraku Mawashi. This demon instructor of the analysis team was also young right now. Tanbo wondered when Kishimoto had even come up with the setting for this demon instructor. Hopefully, it wasn't a personality trait he possessed yet. Tanbo hadn't expected this. Watching the anime wasn't enough, so he had stayed up all night reading a Naruto fanfic, only to die of exhaustion and transmigrate. Now he was in the midst of the Third Shinobi World War. He had been forced to graduate at only the 5th grade level. Terrified of dying, he had quickly identified the best place to stay safe, following the path of the original Tabitake Tanbo. A member of the analysis team. They had only one mission: read the intelligence inside the enemy's brain, organize it, and hand it over to superiors. In times of peace, they were like the 2 gatekeepers of Konoha. They stayed put where they were needed. It couldn't be better. Mawashi led him to a side area of the encampment. Since it was wartime, the environment was naturally harsh. Here, this is the specific training method for the Psycho Mind Transmission. With your sensory talent, it shouldn't be difficult. If there's anything you don't understand, ask me after I finish my mission. Mawashi tossed him a scroll and left. Tanbo knew the battlefield was an emergency. Every second counted. Even his classmates, Might Guy Ebisu and Shiranui Genma, had to join the battle immediately. As a logistics specialist, he didn't have the luxury of one-on-one or one-on-3 specialized training. He opened the scroll. Peeling back the bandages on his face, he revealed his eyes. He thought learning the execution of the mind-reading technique would be simple. He had underestimated it. The scroll was filled with dense lines of text and figures. It was incredibly long. However, as he delved deeper into the reading, he realized that beyond the execution method, the scroll listed techniques on how to maximize intelligence retrieval once inside someone's mind. It also detailed methods to prevent the other person's thoughts from invading one's own mind during the process. Essentially, this jutsu was like an academic subject. The hand signs were the least important part. As long as one had sensory talent and decent spiritual energy, the execution was simple. As he read, the characters seemed to come alive. Tanbo found it exceptionally easy to understand. It wasn't nearly as difficult as he had imagined. Rat, horse, tiger. Once he finished reading, he quickly formed the hand signs. The formula for the Psycho Mind Transmission was executed by him with total ease. He scanned the camp, but finding nothing suitable to practice his mind reading on, he released the jutsu. What should I do next? To prevent enemy attacks, the analysis team was located in a hidden spot. He couldn't practice any flashy, high-impact ninjutsu here. I'll just practice my sensing then. He was, after all, a sensory-type ninja, a rarity compared to those with basic wind-style chakra. He wrapped the bandages back over his eyes. In his perception, everything around him turned into lines. This was how he could keep his eyes covered without affecting his movement. He formed the tiger seal and refined his chakra. Suddenly, his perception shifted. Within a 1-kilometer radius, the chakra signatures of distant frogs, birds, and shinobi appeared in his mind. While not as visually direct as the Byakugan, it was top-tier talent for a commoner. No wonder sensory ninjas were so rare. He then experimented with other basic ninjutsu, transformation, clone jutsu, and more. He realized a pattern. Since transmigrating, his talent seemed to have been boosted. No matter the knowledge, he could master it easily and even innovate upon it. For example, with the transformation jutsu, the original Tanbo could only transform into things he had observed for a long time. Now, with just a glance at a nearby animal, its form and gait would manifest in his mind, allowing for an instant, perfect transformation. The clone jutsu was the same. Before, it took him a full second. Now his hand seals were a third faster. In a real fight, that was the difference between life and death. "What are you doing? Didn't I tell you to learn the mind-reading technique?" While Tanbo was practicing chakra control by climbing a tree, Dokuraku Mawashi reappeared. Seeing that Tanbo wasn't following his instructions, Mawashi felt a surge of irritation. It was wartime. A ninja who didn't follow orders died easily. "I've learned it, I just didn't have a subject to test it on," Tanbo said as he dropped down in front of him. Mawashi froze, his face full of disbelief. According to the records, while Tanbo was strong in sensory talent, his performance in ninjutsu and theory at the academy was only above average. "Follow me." Since the boy claimed success, Mawashi didn't argue. Besides, with Tanbo's face covered in bandages, it was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Curious, Tanbo followed. They soon arrived at an underground secret room. A series of closed doors lined the corridor. Mawashi led him into one of the rooms. The ninja inside has already had his intelligence extracted. His mind is in a state of chaos. Give it a try. Remember, don't push yourself. Tanbo stepped inside. The room was dim, lit only by a single flickering candle. Inside sat a dazed Sunagakure ninja. It seemed that forced mind reading had some nasty side effects. Mawashi didn't leave. He stayed by the side to watch, ensuring Tanbo didn't do anything reckless. Tanbo skillfully formed the hand signs and placed both hands on the neural centers just above the ninja's temples. He really did learn it, Mawashi thought, watching the boy's movements. He knew Tanbo wasn't lying. Back then, it had taken Mawashi 3 days to master this. Furthermore, Tanbo knew exactly where the nerves were most accessible from the outside. Starting from there saved a lot of effort during the mental intrusion. As Tanbo's spirit invaded the man's brain, he felt as if he were traveling through a time tunnel. Within the tunnel, massive fragments of memory flashed by. From entering the academy as a child to graduating and being sent on missions, the man was just a minor genin. However, his experience was quite rich, having survived the battlefields of the Third War for half a year before being captured by Konoha. Most of the memories were non-linear and fragmented, likely due to the previous interrogations. However, Tanbo still absorbed a wealth of experience, combat tactics, scouting techniques, and more. He was also surprised, as if all of the other parties' experiences allowed him to infer many things from one. "It seems that in the analysis team, my combat experience won't fall behind anyone else's in the future." Chapter 2 Combats. Tabitake Tanbo's talent far exceeded Dokuraku Mawashi's expectations. He realized the boy's potential was immense. The next day, Tanbo was already assigned mind-reading missions. Through these sessions, he began to understand the true cruelty of war. This was the height of the Third Shinobi World War. Orochimaru was in command, with various Jonin leading squads to repel attacks from other nations. Unfortunately, Orochimaru was the only one of the Sannin present. Jiraiya and Tsunade were nowhere to be found on this front. Sakumo Hadake, the White Fang, had also committed suicide a few years prior. This was arguably Konoha's weakest period in recent history. Meanwhile, Minato Namikaze was making a name for himself, earning the title of the Yellow Flash on the battlefield. From the memories Tanbo read, the rumors were true. Enemies were terrified of him. Shinobi who encountered him were officially authorized to abandon their missions and flee on sight. War is terrifying. I'd better stick to being a diligent worker in the analysis team, Tanbo thought. Navigating through various memories only strengthened his resolve. Saving the world was a job for the protagonists of each era. As he read more minds, his psycho-mind transmission grew increasingly proficient, so much so that it startled his captain, Dokuraku Mawashi. In his spare time, Tanbo practiced taijutsu, shuriken jutsu, and kunai throwing with his colleagues. On the battlefield, these were the most practical tools for a genin. During this time, he also met another teammate, Shimon, who was a newcomer just like him. "Sai, I hate war," Shimon lamented. Tanbo replied, "I hate it too. But since we've become Konoha shinobi, we have to do our part for the village." Today's mission wasn't heavy. They were assigned to patrol the perimeter of the base in two-man cells. Of course, this was mostly to train the genin, as the analysis team's headquarters was actually guarded by the Anbu. While on duty, Tanbo made sure to express his will of fire to his colleagues from time to time. It was a tool that never failed to be useful. Shueisha, Shueisha. The two patrolled the dim forest, scanning their surroundings and occasionally using sensory ninjutsu to detect any potential enemies. This was their daily routine. Tanbo, however, did a bit more. He never forgot to learn while patrolling. Having extracted so many memories, he had acquired unique taijutsu styles and specialized shuriken and kunai techniques from other hidden villages. He benefited greatly from this. But the biggest gains were the scouting experience, code analysis, and tracking methods. It was a true eye-opener. For a ninja, especially a commoner without a Kekkei Genkai, that theoretical knowledge was often more reliable on the battlefield than ninjutsu itself. Wait, something's happening. Suddenly, Tanbo stopped and activated his sensory ninjutsu. A map of chakra signatures within a 2-kilometer radius appeared in his mind. 1 kilometer to the east, a small unit has suddenly appeared. Based on their chakra levels, it's an elite squad. In his sensory vision, over a dozen people had suddenly breached their warning perimeter. The smallest chakra signature among them was roughly equal to their captain, Dokuraku Mawashi. Let's go report to the captain. Even though the Anbu hadn't detected them yet, since they had to report it. Shimon used his own sensory ninjutsu to confirm Tanbo's findings, and the two quickly returned to the analysis team base. Reporting, situation detected. They found Mawashi and immediately relayed their discovery. Mawashi didn't dare be careless and reported to his superior, the squad leader Yamanaka Inoichi. Within moments, Inoichi appeared, leading 4 squads. Good job, follow me. The command made Tanbo's brain stall. Was the analysis team actually going into combat? Yes, they really were. However, their role was to block the enemy's escape on the outer perimeter. The main force, led by Inoichi and supported by the patrolling Anbu, would handle the elimination. Blocking the outskirts served as a practical test for the juniors. They hid in the shadows, suppressing their breath. Shimon, it's your first battle. Are you nervous? Tanbo asked. Shimon replied, no, this is a ninja's duty. Tanbo didn't know how to respond to that. In truth, he wasn't nervous either. He had witnessed so many battles while reading intelligence that he had become accustomed to them. He pulled out wire and paper bombs, explosive tags, setting traps nearby. These traps were designed based on his integrated analysis of enemy memories, placed in the most likely paths of retreat. Good lad, I didn't expect your trap-making skills to be this high, Dokuraku Mawashi praised him. As a chunin who had survived several years of war, he could see that Tanbo's traps were of a very high caliber. Tanbo smiled. He felt that his mind in the shinobi world was becoming something akin to Kisuke Urahara or Ryuken Ishida from Bleach, though his focus wasn't on scientific research. Clang clang. Intense fighting broke out in the distance. In Tanbo's perception, different natures of chakra were clashing violently, accompanied by the roar of explosive tags. Since Yamanaka Inoichi was still alive in the original series, Tanbo knew they would win this encounter. Sure enough, a few moments later, several enemies scattered and fled in different directions. One of them headed straight toward their position. Here he comes. The 3 reacted simultaneously. Following the 3-man formation they learned at the academy, they ambushed the escapee's path. Several shuriken appeared in Tanbo's hand. After signaling his teammates, he launched them at clever angles. The intruder wore an Iwagakure, hidden stone forehead protector. Judging by the situation, he was a chunin with rich combat experience. Therefore, Tanbo chose to attack with projectiles from different angles to test the opponent's reflexes. Indeed, the enemy showed his experience. He dodged 2 shuriken with a sidestep and deflected another with a kunai, his vigilance never wavering. Suddenly, a massive log swung down from above. The enemy formed hand signs and rock covered his arm as he punched the log away. More shuriken flew in, this time a coordinated strike from Shimon and Mawashi. Simultaneously, the wire traps Tanbo had designed closed in on him at high speed. The enemy's expression soured, and he suddenly vanished before their eyes. The hidden stone's earth release, hiding in rock technique. Tanbo immediately identified the jutsu. However, time to test if this move works. He thought of a technique he had only practiced a few times, meant for dealing with diverse enemies. He hadn't expected to use it so soon. His hands blurred into seals. Earth release, earth turning to steel. He was a specialized sensory ninja. Such a level of underground travel couldn't hide from him. He slammed his palm onto the ground above the tunneling enemy. Visibly, the soil beneath him shifted into solid rock. This was a C-rank jutsu, not widely used but a perfect counter for Earth-release tunneling. Zump. The enemy realized what was happening, but it was too late. Tanbo leaped away as a mangled, bloodied figure forced its way out of the ground. The enemy tried to attack Tanbo but then collapsed. Jacques. Mawashi drove a kunai into the enemy's heart to ensure he wasn't faking death. Only then did he turn to Tanbo. Impressive handling of the situation. Chapter 3: Changing Positions. Tanbo, the higher-ups have officially credited us with an A-rank mission for that last one. You really are my lucky star. Dokuraku Mawashi chuckled as he spoke to Tabaitake Tanbo, his face full of joy. Hearing this, Tanbo was also quite satisfied. During wartime, recorded missions could be exchanged for Ryo ninjutsu scrolls or other shinobi resources once the conflict ended. For an A-rank mission, the standard rate usually started at least 1,000,000 Ryo. That was enough to buy over 100 explosive tags. Of course, he'd have to wait for the war to end. Currently, all resources were prioritized for the front lines. But that wasn't all. Detecting the enemy was one mission, but reading their memories was another. Tanbo had managed to snag a B-rank credit for that as well. According to the extracted memories, that group was a decapitation unit sent by Iwagakure, specifically targeting Konoha's logistics. Intelligence units, the corpse processing team, the torture and interrogation force, the analysis team, and the medical corps, these were all logistics units and their primary targets. Fortunately, they had detected them early. If they had been caught off guard, the losses would have been catastrophic. "Oh, Captain, is there something else?" Tanbo asked. "Haha, actually there is." Mawashi's smile faded, replaced by a serious expression. Based on the intelligence from the enemy's memories, we can't be certain whether they managed to send our current location back to their base. Therefore, we are moving the analysis team's position. Tanbo straightened up immediately. Understood. Good, get ready, we move out tonight. After giving his orders, Mawashi hurried to the next location, likely to notify the rest of the team. Tanbo, feeling a flicker of anxiety, first used his sensory ninjutsu to sweep the area. Only after confirming there were no enemies within a 1-kilometer radius did he release the seal. He was determined to stay safe within the analysis team and contribute to Konoha from the shadows. He couldn't let the enemy discover their base. Night fell. Beneath the shroud of darkness, several dark figures flickered through the forest. Their presence was so well hidden that even birds nesting nearby failed to notice anyone passing. Tanbo was among them. One of the most basic yet vital skills for a shinobi, breath suppression. When watching the anime, he hadn't felt much about it, but actually using it made him realize that being a shinobi was truly an assassination profession. Hashirama and Madara were essentially just warriors fighting under the banner of shinobi. Judging by the movements of the analysis team and their Anbu guards, everyone's stealth foundations were excellent. Their advance was silent. Even Shimon, a fellow genin, performed flawlessly. At this moment, Tanbo couldn't help but wonder, how did Naruto ever manage to graduate? Was it really just because of the multi-shadow clone jutsu? It was likely political necessity that pushed his graduation. Otherwise, mere clones wouldn't meet the basic standards of a genin. Frankly, even now, Tanbo felt he had plenty of ways to deal with Naruto's clones, partly due to his future knowledge, he thought confidently. Given the characteristic of shadow clones, transferring experiences back to the original body upon dispersal, they were actually easy to counter. For instance, he could reverse the use of psycho mind transmission to funnel his own agonizing thoughts into the clone. Even if the clone vanished, the pain wouldn't. Psycho mind transmission, pain. Lately, to survive this war, he had been doing everything possible to grow stronger. Since he lacked a Kekkei Genkai and his chakra reserves were only at the level of an average genin, he focused on maximizing his strengths. Aside from practicing different nature transformations, he developed a combat style suited to his advantages. Sensing and spiritual energy were his forte, so that became his focus. Psycho mind transmission. Pain involved collecting the suffering he encountered while reading the minds of numerous shinobi, physical pain, mental trauma, the loss of family or friends, the agony of torture, and sealing those pain signals in his mind. Then using genjutsu, he could transmit that concentrated agony directly into an enemy's heart. He only needed a split-second opening to end it with a kunai to the chest. While powerful shinobi could likely regain control quickly, shinobi battles were high-mobility affairs. A single moment was all it took. Indeed, his path to power was genjutsu. In the anime, the ceiling for genjutsu was the Sharingan. Aside from that, the highest-tier practitioners were Kurenai Yuhai and her father, Shinku Yuhai. While others might not find non-Sharingan genjutsu impressive, Tanbo was confident that with his talent he could eventually hold his own against someone like Itachi Uchiha. At the very least, reaching Jonin level shouldn't be a problem. If things got too dangerous, he'd just stay hidden and let the children of the prophecy handle the enemies. Shueisha, Shueisha. We've arrived, everyone set up camp, move quickly. Ambu guards and sensory ninja patrol the perimeter. Ensure no intelligence reaches the enemy. Yes, sir. Following the orders of Yamanaka Inoichi, the analysis team leader, everyone moved with disciplined efficiency. As a sensory ninja, Tanbo was assigned to an Anbu squad for patrol and search duties. Several days passed since the relocation, and the analysis team returned to its routine. Tanbo clocked in for work every day, using his free time to practice ninjutsu and taijutsu, as well as developing his genjutsu. Much of his knowledge came from the minds he read. After integrating and organizing the information, he had devised a training regimen for himself. This was actually part of the analysis team's work. If they extracted a jutsu Konoha didn't have, or a simplified set of hand seals, reporting it earned rewards. His chakra was also growing faster. Initially, he could only release earth turning to steel 3 times before exhausting his chakra. Now, he could manage 5 in a short period. Spiritual energy, physical energy. A month passed and Tanbo grew rapidly. Wartime was a catalyst. The accumulation of spiritual energy through constant life and death stakes was something Naruto's era couldn't compare to. His chakra reserves were becoming sufficient to sustain a prolonged battle. Over the past month, by reading various enemy memories, he had figured out their general location, the border of the Land of Fire just behind the front lines. Being so close to the front explained why there were new enemies to interrogate every day. This kept Tanbo on edge, fearing an enemy might pop out of nowhere. He never let up on his scheduled sensory sweeps. Iwagakure's offensive was currently ferocious, simultaneously taking on Konoha and Kumagakure, Hidden Cloud. Even with Konoha's superior medical system and elite ninja like the Yellow Flash and Orochimaru, the village was showing signs of exhaustion. It made Tanbo want to run off and find Tsunade and Jiraiya to beg them to return. He was terrified that the plot might deviate from the anime. Interestingly, in one enemy's memory, he saw a silver-haired figure using lightning release, as well as a glimpse of Minato Namikaze. Beside them was a boy wearing goggles and a beautiful girl with a Dora bob-cut hairstyle. This is the end of part 1 of the video. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. You have reached the end of the text.